Hi, I'm Lori.
And I'm Kevin, and this is No Longer Ashamed.
We are survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
And we're here to share with you that if you're a survivor, you don't have to be alone.
Our logo is a salamander, and the reason is a fire salamander can survive a fire, and you have survived a fire.
We want to help you with your journey to healing and hope.
We are all survivors together, and we walk this journey together, and you are not alone.
By telling our stories, we are hoping that you will have the courage to share your stories as well and find your voice.
Because stories are so important, and for so long I know that I wouldn't tell my story, but when I finally shared my story, that's when I got my freedom.
And this is our journey and your journey to healing and hope. So come with us. Fallout. What happens after you break the secret?
You know, it is interesting because first it's so hard to tell the secret and to tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
Because you think, I don't know, but I feel like so many people feel like it's their fault because that's what they're told, right? That's what they're groomed. And then they finally tell the secret and then they're believed or they're not believed. And it's like, what's going to happen? Maybe a family member isn't going to be able to be around anymore because you have kids now, or there's just so many elements to it, and that's and that's why it's so important to have help and have support. And it seems to me like when you were going through this, you had a support group, you had a counselor.
Before I actually confronted my family and basically was the whistleblower, I had my support in place, and that's really important because for me the fallout was not massive. It wasn't everything, just kind of we dealt with it at the time and then we got past it and went back to normal, so to speak.
Well, but there was this element of your mom feeling so bad and so guilty, and that was never your intention.
No, and that was probably the worst fallout was for my mother,
right?
And because she had no idea what had happened and she felt guilty for it, and that was devastating for her but also for me because I didn't want her to feel like it was her fault. I didn't want to blame her.
That wasn't your intention.
That wasn't my intention at all, and I felt terrible that she felt that way.
But as a parent, we do.
Yeah.
We parent guilt is so strong. And here's the thing is that then when you tell, they may believe you, and then it may be hard like with your mom, or they may say, like for a person in my life when he told his mom, she said, "I don't believe you."
Mm-hmm. And then there's
there's fallout from that, because what do you do with that?
Fallout of then what do you do? How do you address that when you're not being believed?
Right. And I work with addicts, and a lot of them, we talk about we understand addiction is a disease, but what drove you to that? And so often it is some sort of abuse. And this week a client asked me, she said, "How do I love myself?" And I told her, I said, "Well, you've got to look in the mirror." She goes, "I can't. I can put on my makeup, but I don't look in the mirror." And the sooner we can look at ourselves in the mirror and see. So for me, I could put on my makeup because my mom made me wear makeup, but I didn't look at myself. So when I started doing, they call it mirror work, when I started looking in the mirror, I looked like my mom. So it was hard, but I feel like I have kind of vibrant blue eyes. So I was like, I like my eyes. So I could look in the mirror and I could say, I like my eyes. And as time went on, I found out how to fall in love with myself. But as long as we continue to hate ourselves and feel guilty and feel like it was our fault, we're still going to be the victim.
As long as we believe the lies that the perpetrator told us to keep it a secret.
And if we were young, of course you believe that.
Yeah, but as long as we continue that, then we're going to feel like it is our fault, or there's something wrong with us, or we're a bad person. But when you do break the silence, when you come out and the secret's broken, then all the dynamics change in your family or wherever, whoever's affected by it, then everything gets changed. And then we have to figure out how to go forward and heal and get better with this new dynamic. And that's the whole another fallout, is just realizing that maybe all those years that you believed the perpetrator, that they would be sent to jail or you're going to get hurt, or all the lies that they, when you realize...
Or you'll get taken away from your family.
Yeah, when you realize those were lies, then you have this realization that you've been living a lie, basically. And so you have to, and then it's emotionally damaging to realize that what you've believed is wrong. And now you have to start over, basically. And
with what the truth is.
With the truth. And so it can be hard. It can be really hard when you break this secrecy and then you realize that you're thinking your beliefs were all flawed. They were all wrong.
Right.
And now you have to change that way of thinking, and you have to change your beliefs and realize that you were just being lied to.
Exactly. And that's why counseling is so important. And, you know, Kevin, this is one thing that I have heard you say without saying over and over, is it's such a process.
Yeah.
That it's not, oh, I remember. It's like, it's such a process. And I think God is so gracious, because I remember when I started remembering, I just said to God, just show me everything. Let's just get this, you know, let's get on with it.
Yeah.
And God was so gracious to me because of my situation. Not only did it involve my immediate family, but grandparents. And, you know, our grandparents, our grandfathers babysat us. So there was that whole thing. So it was such a process. And I know I've said this before, but I thought, when I remembered, I thought, oh, I can get healed and then I can go talk about it. And then all of a sudden it's like, it wasn't just one person.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, you know, it was many people. And so if you have that, it's a process.
Yeah, it's huge.
You know, but there is that the healing is available. And I was talking with somebody who the other day who had a different kind of abuse. It wasn't sexual abuse, but they said that they were so grateful for their childhood. And it's like, to get to that point, that's a process.
Yeah.
And when you get to that point, that's when, you know, the healing starts. But first, I feel like it's that thing about grief, you know, the 5 stages of grief. And I feel like there's no certain stage that comes first or last in this, except that you tell the secret, you know the secret, then you doubt. You think, maybe I didn't. You go through that? Maybe I made this all up. And then you're like, no, of course I didn't. You know?
Yeah, well, and especially for people who had repressed memories and they're having flashbacks or something, and so they're getting these images or these feelings that they don't know where they're coming from, and maybe they don't remember everything. So to come out with it is really scary, because maybe they're wrong. Maybe it really didn't happen. Maybe they're just imagining it.
Right.
Maybe, but...
So I had a childhood friend call me, and she said, I am having memories of your basement.
Oh God.
Right. And I remembered enough that I knew, but what it did was it validated, but it also broke my heart.
Yeah.
And all I could say is, I believe you, you know, and I let her tell me what she wanted to tell me. But, it's like, first of all, it's just you. Then maybe it's a sibling. Maybe it's a neighbor. Or maybe you're the one that takes it for the family. I mean, that's the thing about fallout, is there's so many. Your story is so individual and it's so unique. And that's why it's so important to share it.
Yeah. Well, and also the family dynamics can be, completely messed up, because they're all trying to keep the secret if they're aware of it. And if you repress the memory and then suddenly you're starting to remember things, they have basically created a situation where that they've been hiding it so long.
Just be quiet. Let's just be quiet.
That they're not going to be real encouraging when you come forward.
Right. And when you think, so as a single mom, I remarried briefly, and I married someone who was a raging alcoholic. He did not sexually abuse my children, but he was abusive, and we got away from him. and I made a decision to not date. And so now I've been single for 16 years. But here's the problem is when single women start dating and their children get abused, if the mom wants the man more than the child, then the child gets thrown under the bus.
Yeah.
And so there's that whole element of why didn't my mom choose me?
Yeah. So how do you deal with the fallout? You're going to probably have fallout, and it can affect you in completely different ways than you expect because you've been taught this lie. You've been taught that you're going to expect something terrible.
Right.
And maybe the terrible thing doesn't happen, but what happens is your whole dynamic changes. So, and you might not be ready for that.
Right.
Your life gets changed in a way that you're not prepared for.
So I want to hear what you said. How did you deal with this? But what, for me, I had to keep saying, what is the truth here? And for me, I had other things in my family. I had mental illness, but it's like whenever these things came up, it was like, what is the truth? Because this is what I would say in my mind. I'd be like, how is this me? I thought I had a normal life.
Yeah.
I thought I had a normal childhood. So now I've got all this, crap.
Stuff.
And so it's like, what is the truth? And saying that over and over. And it's hard and you feel alone. And when your family doesn't believe you, I know I told you this in other episodes. We lost our family by telling the secret. And so I feel like it's like asking for the truth. And that's where God comes in. We never have to beg God. We never have to beg God for anything, but we can ask him to show us. And he is so gracious, he'll only show us what we can handle, but that we find this way to honor ourselves and honor what we went through, as ugly as it is.
Yeah. It gets to the point where it has to be about you.
Right.
You have to realize the family will react in ways you didn't expect. They might blame you. They might say, why are you making such a big deal about this?
Yeah.
But you still have to look at, it's got to be about you're taking care of yourself. Yeah. And how do you do that?
How do you do that?
How do you do that?
How did you do that? Because it was a process, right?
Yeah, it was a process of therapy, and also I had to set boundaries, and that's why I confronted my family. I had to set boundaries because I was having physical and emotional issues when.
Can you say what those were?
Well, if the person who was the perpetrator ever called me on the phone, I would literally disassociate because that's the only way I can handle it.
Right.
If I had to be around him in person, I would have massive fallout later on. I would basically disassociate while I was around him, and then afterwards I would just be a wreck. And so I had to set boundaries and say, look.
So your survival skills.
Yeah, this is how I can handle this, and I have to make sure I am safe. And so I had to do that, and I had to be selfish because it was affecting my life.
Yeah, but we call it selfish, but it's not. It's self-full.
Yeah.
Because self-care is so important, and we have a right to that.
And that's what you have to look at.
Right.
There will be fallout, but you have to remember that you have to take care of yourself in this, because the rest of the family, whoever else is involved in this, who's been telling you the lies, or they're not trying to take care of you. And they have their interest.
Oh yeah, they're trying to protect the secret
themselves.
But I always say this, as humans, we want to be seen and heard. And I teach this coaching class, and it's like your clients want to be seen and heard, and we want to be seen and heard. And I think what is so hard is that when we're not believed, that then we have to, I was just listening to this podcast about the whole Jeffrey Epstein, and how these women, each one of them thought they were the only one. So, and then because the state called them prostitutes, did you know this?
No.
The underage girls, instead of saying what it was, they called them prostitutes. So then they wouldn't come forward. You know why? They thought they'd be arrested and go to prison for being prostitutes.
Oh, yeah.
So
because they were hired to be masseuses or whatever.
exactly. And so that's the power of the lie. And just knowing that it's a process, that like today I feel guilty, tomorrow I feel empowered, and 3 days down the road I'm a wreck and I'm crying all day, is that it is a process. And then you're going to feel good again, and it's going to cycle through. And then one day all of a sudden you're going to go, oh man, I haven't even thought about those things. Right? And so it feels so raw in the beginning, and it's just so important that you honor yourself as a survivor.
Honor yourself, honor the process,
Yeah.
and realize what matters is that you take care of yourself through this, but also that you end the secret. I mean,
Exactly.
it's important that the secret is broken.
And use your language. Like you said, I had to be selfish, but it's self-full. You know, use the language that protects you, because it's like they will say you are selfish. So if you're protecting yourself and you feel selfish, you're not selfish, you're self-full. Because I just had an experience with somebody who just felt like such a burden, and they weren't. But they felt like such a burden. And no matter what I said, I couldn't convince them that they weren't a burden, that their presence was a blessing to me. And so every situation is so different, right? And that we are able to just get the help and build a team to support us and walk with us.
Yeah, I know I felt like a burden when I was doing this, and partly because of how it affected my family, and especially my mother.
Really?
And I felt like I was just a burden on the family at first.
That hurts my heart.
But the truth is, you know, if the secret never comes out, the family's going to be just a wreck.
Right.
So it's so necessary.
Can you imagine what your life would be like if you just decided to continue to stuff
No,
it?
I can't.
I don't think you would be in this marriage that you're in.
And I wouldn't be doing this, obviously. And that's why I'm doing this, is I can't imagine what my life would have been like if I hadn't addressed this.
You know, and I'll tell you, for me, telling your wife was very big for me, but because my sibling paved the way, it made it easier. But seriously, my temperament and the way I am, so my siblings lovingly call me the weak link because I'm the one that perpetrators contact, because they know they can get to me because I have that compassion. And so it's recognizing too how you are and who you are. And I'm so grateful. Often the siblings, there'll be this separation, right?
Yeah.
Because they won't believe you. So I feel very grateful for siblings that believe me. But it's also like they have a very firm stand on where they are at. And it's not that I don't have a firm stand. It's just that I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
You're more empathetic. You're more...
Oh, so pathetic.
No, it's not. No, it's not. That's definite
But that's
quality.
the realness, right? So that's us being honest. Sometimes I feel so pathetic and I have forgiven. I think I forgave before I needed to, before I got it, because of that thing that happened when I was 14. I've shared this before. I was at some sort of Christian convention, and he said, if you don't forgive, you will become like that person. And so in my 14-year-old mind, I was all about forgiveness. And so I feel like for me, that was a blessing, even though maybe it was like the wrong order, like we talked about earlier. But I knew if I didn't forgive, I was going to become that person, and I did not. I did not want to become that person.
And you can't even get to a point of forgiveness if you don't break the secret, really. I mean, how do you even get past any of these issues if you never bring it up, if you never get past the secrecy?
And if you don't talk about it, then every situation that you run into. So, for instance, for me, I would see a dad with a baby, and I would be like freaking out because my mind couldn't comprehend that that's a normal thing.
That was okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the more we talk about it, then the more we start to find our place and what is normal. Because, for instance, this client I have, it's a Munchausen's. You know what that is?
Yeah.
And so she thought that was normal. And so all of a sudden, she started to understand what Munchausen's was. And she's like, I think that's what happened to me. So it's that realization when you start to recognize, and it feels so crazy. And you think you're the crazy one. Your family thinks you're the crazy one. But then you just keep walking through it. And you just keep looking for people that believe you.
Yeah. and support you.
Yeah.
But the hard part is the breaking the secret, of
Yeah.
course. But then the next thing is dealing with how the fallout
Wasn't it
affects
you that kept saying, I think it was the episode with Mike where he was like, did that really happen? You know, that we question ourselves. And that is such a worldly thing of you're making this up. And isn't that what we're told? You know, and so, you know, I believe when we speak the truth, when we do speak the truth, and there is the fallout, but we know what we know, what we know. And also there's that AA saying, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Yeah.
Right? So we get to make the change. We get to live a better life, and we get to thrive because we're brave enough and courageous enough to tell our story.
To tell the truth.
Yes.
The hard part about it is the truth does hurt sometimes. Even I remember it hurt for me to realize to actually acknowledge what I'd gone through and realize that by bringing it up, I couldn't hide it anymore. And so it became more just, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I think I spent most of my life just ignoring how I had been affected.
Right.
Just trying to fake it, that I hadn't been affected by this.
And we think it's normal. So then when we start to put words to it, that makes it like slays open. It's like filleting a fish, right? All the stuff, all the guts come out.
Yeah, and when you look back at it and start examining it, I know I had really hard times of depression just because I was mourning my childhood and mourning my early adult years because I spent those just wasted.
Right.
Just trying to survive. And I had this just massive sense of loss because I wasted so many years and my childhood was just a wreck. I know for me, the big fallout was initially just dealing with my family and trying to set boundaries. And then it was the depression, the sadness. And that was really hard.
And how did you get through that?
I wasn't a believer at the time, but I prayed a lot. I just prayed to God because I needed God in my life, and I didn't have God in my life, but I didn't think I could get through it. I went on really long walks by myself, praying and just waiting for some sign that God would be there.
Even when we're healed, even when we've overcome it, just as last week, I was thinking where I might have been had I not gone through this. I always had this huge dream to be on mornings and radio. Now, I was on mornings and radio. That's how I started. So I did have that experience. And I look at my age now, and it's not like some people might go, don't say you can't, but I'm on my way out. That has passed for me, and I am focusing on some new things. But often I think, had I not had that interrupted my childhood, where I might have been. And so I think there's something healthy about that, but it's not something you want to dwell on. Because here's the thing, is because I broke the cycle. My children, I remember when my kids were little thinking, they don't even know how good they have it. And then I had to repent because I wanted them to know how I had suffered. But because I had suffered, because I had done the work, they didn't have to suffer. I saved them a step. And I look at my kids and what they're doing, and they're so far ahead of the game. So for me, that's my blessing. It may have stunted my growth,
but you broke the cycle.
But I broke the cycle, and they are benefiting from that.
Well, and I look at where I am now and where I was before I actually dealt with this, and I don't know that I would have survived, really, because I was on a self-destructive path.
So you think you easily could have died?
There were several times I think I could have died before I started taking care of this, and I think if I didn't...
Like drugs and alcohol?
Yeah, I think if I didn't actually stop and turn around and deal with this, I probably would have done something very destructive. I mean, I was a wreck in a lot of ways and took really bad care of myself. Although my dad made it to 94, and he was not a poster child for healthy living, so who knows?
I really struggled with depression, but we didn't know what it was back then. I thought a lot about driving off a cliff, but I also had this feeling if I did and I lived and I became a paraplegic.
Yeah.
I knew Johnny Erickson, you know her?
No.
As a teenager, she dove into a lake and hit a rock. And she's been a paraplegic, but she's an artist and a singer, and she's just made the best of her life. But I knew I would live if I tried to kill myself. So I didn't. But then when I decided to go to counseling, I remember my dad was so against it. And I didn't understand that. But I went. And the first thing that the counselor did, this was before we knew any history of anything that happened, is she was like, tell me about your family history. Well, my grandma had committed suicide and there was alcoholism. And so all these things. And so when that for me set the stage of beginning to get well. So it was a process and I didn't know at that time.
Yeah.
I just knew, no wonder I'm depressed, right?
Yeah.
And then you keep walking, you keep working, and that counseling is like the best thing you can do. And if you hate your counselor or you feel like it's not working, get a new one. Don't give up. Find a new one.
Yeah.
Find a better one, because when you get a good counselor, would you agree?
Yeah, I was really lucky. I trusted mine right away, but I chose them randomly, basically.
Really? Like just out of the phone book?
Yeah, quite literally. I was looking for someone with a sliding scale and went and called a couple places to see if they did, and they did. The one that did, I went to him and immediately felt comfortable and trusted him, and was very lucky that way, because in another episode, we're going to talk about triggers.
Right,
and
yes.
for me, I have some very severe triggers. And I know I've had to be very selective about who my doctor is, who my barber is, who all these things, because I won't go to a doctor if it's not someone I'm comfortable with. And I spent years just not going to the doctor because I just didn't like that. And going to the barbers, I mean, it was a joke, but I had long hair for a long time, mainly because I didn't like getting my hair cut, because everyone who had cut my hair before that was a man.
It's so funny because I haven't seen you for 2 weeks, and I noticed right away you got your hair cut.
Yeah. But for years, I just didn't like getting my hair cut because I didn't like male barbers, and I didn't equate that. I just had this thing about getting my hair cut.
So it's funny because the people that abused me were older men. So I have this thing about older men, grandparent. Well, now I'm an older woman, but I remember driving down the street. My neighbor and I used to share rides, and there was this little old man walking across the street to get his mail. And my friend, my neighbor who was sharing a ride with me, said, "Isn't he cute?" And I said, "I want to run over him." I want to hit the gas pedal and run over him. And she was like mortified. And then I was mortified. She was mortified. But when you have an older person that abused you, so whatever the age of the person, right?
Yeah.
And so I will look forward to talking about triggers. But as far as fallout, I feel like, so I was telling you earlier about a friend who said, I'm not going to deal with this. I'm not going to go back. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to power through. And I am here to tell you, you don't have to power through. Tell your story.
Yeah.
Tell your story and find the believers.
And keep telling your story.
Right. And I
find
remember
the people that will listen to you.
That's right. Where you can be seen and heard.
Yeah.
I remember my mom, we had some man living at our house, and we had a 2-story house. We were in the basement, which flooded all the time. There were no walls. It was just that pink insulation. And this person was staying in the basement. And I remember my mom saying, hey, if anything ever weird happens, just scream. And immediately what I thought is, it's too late.
Yeah.
But I also knew I couldn't tell her because she wouldn't believe me. She would choose his side. So the beautiful thing about this, Kevin, is that I look at you and I, and we have pretty great lives.
Yeah. And that's why it's so much more important to break the secret.
Yes.
To, like I said earlier, I don't know where I would be right now, what my life would be like if I hadn't chosen to take the steps to change.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even imagine. I was a wreck in a lot of ways. And
I look at your process, it's like, and then you told your mom, and then I don't know what the time frame was, but then you told your church, which, I was very protective of you, but you had good success in telling your church. And we were fearful that you may not be able to be a youth leader anymore or whatever, but that, it is a process. And when we can take a minute and look at how far we've come and the life that we have, because we were brave enough
to break the cycle,
to speak the words, to say, even if we think it was our fault, we're going to go to jail, right? Because we were told so many crazy things.
What I worry for most people is when they do break the cycle, that they're going to find out that the reality of what they've been taught is so different than what the reality is.
Right.
And then they will feel the shame or the feeling like of being wrong.
Right.
And believing the wrong thing, and then being depressed because it's like you were saying, the cycles of grief.
And the difference between shame and guilt, do you know what that is? Shame says, I'm bad. It's me, I'm bad.
Yeah.
Guilt says, I did something.
Bad.
And I think that if you are in a place where you're vacillating, you're not sure, listen to Brené Brown. She has a Netflix special. She's written many books, and she talks about shame. And hers isn't necessarily abuse, but shame is so prevalent, and we are groomed for shame. So often, here's the thing, a pedophile will sit at a gate of a school and he will see the kids he wants to target. You know why? Because they have so much shame from their family. So we can be targeted because we are from an abusive family.
Yeah.
And so then the shame comes in, and that's where God is so good, because we can let go of that shame. He died for our sins. He died for the shame. And when I say sin, it's not like even our sin. We didn't cause this, but the sin of the person who abused us.
The sins that were done upon us.
Exactly. And the freedom of this it makes it all worth it.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to do this, because I was worried about when we did the episode about secrecy. I was thinking, but then after you talk about it, there's, you find out that the world is changing. Your dynamic changes. Everything changes. And so you have all these sudden changes in your life, and you have to address them. But it's so worth it, because in the long run, you will be healed. You'll be healthy.
Exactly.
Your life will change so much, but in such a positive way.
And recognizing it's a process. And as a coach, this is what I always say, trust the process.
Yeah.
So as you're walking through this and it feels like crap, right?
Yeah.
It feels awful. Whoever said doing the right thing is awesome, no, you feel like that word when you do the right thing.
It's not fun all the time.
It is so worth it in the long run. And that's why you want to stay the course and make sure you find your tribe. Yeah. Find your tribe, your people that believes you enough for you.
So you can keep talking about it.
Right. I can't tell you with my clients how often I say, I believe you. And that's the thing about coaching that I don't think people understand how important it is. I have girls in recovery, and they think that I'm that person that's going to make them jump through more hoops because they don't understand what coaching is. And so then they get to this point where they want their housing voucher, but they have to have a coaching session. And so then they talk to me, and I'm like, I believe you. I hear you. And they're like, wait a minute. I thought I was supposed to be jumping through hoops, And that is how we can help people. If you're listening and you weren't abused, but you know someone who was, I believe you. I believe you. You cannot say that enough. Yeah. And I know sometimes it's hard, but you know what? People don't lie about this kind of thing.
No.
They don't make up this kind of thing.
No one wants to draw attention to themselves by this.
For that reason, right?
Yeah, just
I'll tell you I was a princess or a rock star, but not abused.
Yeah. Actually, that's one of the things I know for me, since I was abused, I kept secrets. I think most people who don't draw attention to themselves are probably survivors, or a lot of them who hide themselves from others.
So I know it's about time to wrap up, but that just something that occurred to me when you said that is that we try to hide, we try to be quiet, we try not to get attention.
Yeah.
And one thing, I worked with a coach and she challenged me to be seen and heard. And when she did that, now she didn't have any experience with this, but what happened was all these memories of me hiding as a child. I would hide in the hamper in the bathroom.
Yeah.
I would hide anywhere I could. And I was pretty petite and tiny, so I could hide, in a lot of places that normal people couldn't hide. And so I think that it is just recognizing that it's okay to be seen and heard, and that it's okay to take up space.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a situation where a person has felt like a real burden, and I keep saying you're not a burden, and they have felt like such a burden, and I can't help but wonder what their abuse was growing up. But that when we decide to keep that, I'm a burden, I'm a pain, that doesn't serve anybody.
Yeah. But when we've been taught that, though, it's
Right.
what we learn.
Exactly. That we have to let go of that and believe that we deserve this space we're sitting in. We deserve this time we're speaking. That God created us to be right here, right now. And wherever you are right now is exactly where you're supposed to be. I believe that with all my heart. And with my recovery clients, and they're struggling with all these crazy things because they're addicts. I'm like, you are right where you're supposed to be.
I bet they love that. But it's hard, but
It is. Because it's like, wait a minute, but I'm a sinner. But wait, but I'm not living a great life. I'm an addict right now. But no, you're right where you're supposed to be. And isn't that what's beautiful? And I heard that in the scriptures I was listening. I wish I could tell you. I feel like it might be Romans, but where you are right now is right where you're supposed to be. For what's next in your life.
Yeah.
And accepting that and embracing it versus rejecting it because I'm bad, I'm icky, I'm ugly. No, you are beautiful and God loves you.
That's the next step after you
Yes.
break the secrecy and you get over the fallout. You start to find the self-love.
Yes.
And realize that God does love unconditionally. And that's a hard one to get to, but...
I look at my grandkids, and I have 3 foster adopt, and I love them. I mean, but my bio granddaughter, she looks like my daughter. And so there's something about her. It's not that I love her more, but when I see her and I feel that love, it's like all I want to do is love myself enough to be able to love her and to love these other kids and be the grandma I'm supposed to be. And you can't do it if you don't love yourself.
You don't take care of yourself.
No. And we punish ourselves. I told my client the other day, I said, she was talking about how she couldn't love herself. And I said, would you ever treat a friend like that? She's like, hell no.
Yeah.
But that's how we treat ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's just perspective. And that's why we're doing this podcast. We just want to keep encouraging you.
Yeah,
Keep on the path.
Yes.
It's worth it.
It is. You are worth it. And you didn't deserve what happened to you.
No.
And you don't
And it
have
wasn't
to
your
keep
fault.
the secret. It wasn't your fault.
Right.
You shouldn't be blamed for this.
Right. And
Even though
whether-
you feel like you'll get blamed.
Right. And whether anybody believes you or not, your truth is your truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we believe you.
We believe you. We want you
That's
to
right.
find healing.
We have a Facebook page called No Longer Ashamed, and we're a little clunky, but we're trying to figure it out. But we are here for you.
Yeah, we want to hear your stories, and we want to hear how you're doing through all this stuff with the COVID nightmare. And just keep in touch. Let us know how you're doing. And on that night, so that's it for today.
We are going to have a prayer time if you want to stick with us. If not, we believe in you.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories.
If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find us. And we really want to spread this message.
Father, I just thank you for all your blessings and pray for everyone listening tonight that they would feel blessed by you, that you would be the good Father that they need and deserve. And then they would feel your unconditional love and would not feel judged by you, Lord, that they would feel just your grace in their life right now. especially if they're going through hard times with their families or with whoever if they're looking for someone to believe them, to trust them. That, Lord, I just pray that you would be there for them and give them peace in their process and give them healing in their lives, Lord. And I just pray that your presence would be a blessing to them.
Father, I'm so grateful that although we've gone through this difficult time, that we're able to share our story, to help others, to let people know they're not alone. And Lord, for that person who's struggling right now, Lord, I pray that you will give them grace and mercy and the confidence to know what they know. And Lord, you are such a good God, and it's so easy for us to blame you that this happened because you weren't a good God. But yet the truth is, Father, is that you give us a free will, and you are there, and you hurt with us. You hurt with us as we hurt. And I'm so grateful, Father, that you have provided. I just keep hearing over and over that if we don't have struggles, that we don't understand your love. And Lord, I don't believe you give us these kind of struggles. I've come against people who say it was meant to be. Don't ever tell me abuse was meant to be. And I don't believe that's the kind of God you are. But Lord, I believe that whatever we go through, you can redeem. And I'm so grateful that you are redeeming us. I'm so grateful, Lord, that we don't have to beg you for one single thing. And I'm so grateful that you say to pray as if it's already happened. And Lord, I'm thanking you for healing. I'm thanking you for forgiveness. I'm thanking you for that soul connection with you, that we can begin to heal and let go. And Lord, if we can't, that you are so gracious to show us the way. And so I just thank you. I thank you for those that are hearing our words right now, that they will feel your grace and they will be able to share their truth, as hard and as scary as it is, because you are always there for us, Father. In your Son's holy name, amen.
Amen.